Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Pari Rakracharya Shota Sata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Sachinandana Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Yamuna Maya Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Granath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Ishkan Vartmana Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Naraim Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayam Yuridayat Nasta Preshu Abreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, and unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, by regular attendance in the classes on the Bhagavatam, and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and with loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay, today is November 13th, 2022, and we are reading from Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 8, Dhruva Maharaj leaves home, and we're reading text 52. Evam Bhagavato Rupam Subhadram Dayato Manaha Nivritya Parayaturnam Sampanam Nanivartate Evam Bhagavato Rupam Subhadram Dayato Manaha Nivritya Parayaturnam Sampanam Nanivartate Evam Bhagavato Rupam Supadram Dayato Manaha Nivritya Parayaturnam Sampanam Nanivartate. Please chant. Evam Bhagavato Rupam Subhadram Dayato Manaha Nivritya Parayaturnam Sampanam Nanivartate.
Evam Bhagavato Rupam
Evam Bhagavato Rupam
Subhadram Dayato Manaha
Subhadram Dayato Manaha Nivritya Parayaturnam
Sampanam Nanivartate
Sampanam Nanivartate. Evam Bhagavato Rupam Subhadram Jayato Manaha Nivritya Parayaturnam Sampanam Nanivartate. Evam Bhagavato Rupam Subhadram Dayato Manaha Nivritya Parayaturnam Sampanam Nanivartate. Anyone else? Evam Bhagavato Rupam Subhadram Dayato Manaha Nivritya Parayaturnam Sampanam Nanivartate. Okay. Word for word. Evam. Thus. Bhagavataha. Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rupam. Form. Supadram. Very auspicious. Dhyayataha. Meditating. Manaha. The mind. Nivritya. Being freed from all material contamination. Paraya. Transcendental. Turnam. Very soon. Sampanam. Being enriched. Na. Never. Nivartate. Come down. Translation. One who meditates in this way, concentrating his mind upon the always auspicious form of the Lord, is very soon freed from all material contamination, and he does not come down from meditation upon the Lord. Please repeat. One who meditates in this way, concentrating his mind upon the always auspicious form of the Lord, is very soon freed from all material contamination. And he does not come down from meditation upon the Lord. Purport. This fixed meditation is called samadhi, or trance. A person constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord cannot be deviated from meditating on the form of the Lord as described herein. The Archana Marg, or the devotional path prescribed in the Pancharatra system of devotional service for worshiping the deity in the temple, makes the devotee think constantly of the Lord. That is samadhi, or trance. One who practices in this way cannot deviate from the service of the Lord, and that makes him perfect in the mission of human life. Okay, so in the last few verses we heard a really nice description of the form of the Lord. It was really beautiful. And what this verse is telling us is that we need to meditate on the form of the Lord, that form is always auspicious. And this will free us from material contamination. And so what we've learned from the third canto is that when we meditate on the form of the Lord, we should start at his feet and work our way up. And I remember from the description in the third canto, which is my favorite so far, that his toenails are like rubies. I remember that. And his thighs are like linseed flowers. The color of linseed flowers, they're not like linseed flowers. And so you start at the feet and you work your way up. And sometimes I find it really hard to just imagine how beautiful the Lord is, and I just find that really hard to fathom. I just can't wrap my mind around it, even reading these descriptions. So sometimes I try to think, okay, what is the most handsome or beautiful boy or girl that I've ever seen, And I think about that and think, okay, however handsome or beautiful that boy or girl is, Krishna is innumerable times more handsome and beautiful than that person. And so that's the only way I can sort of get my mind around it, but it's still not doing any justice, I think, to how beautiful the Lord is. And then also, when you're when you're attracted to someone, or maybe a certain quality in someone, sometimes I think, okay, well, the Lord must have this quality in so much greater abundance than this person. And so those are some ways that I try to imagine just exactly how opulent and beautiful the Lord is, but I still can't quite get my mind around it. And then also I like here in the verse it says that you're very soon freed from all material contamination, and he does not come down for meditation upon the Lord. So I don't know if you remember, but one of the first flyers that the devotees made in New York when Prabhupada first came said, "Stay high forever." And, I think at the time it was probably a sort of a double entendre to appeal to, people that were involved in intoxication. But also, it's true, you stay high forever once you reach that point of samadhi where you don't have to come down. That's what this verse is telling us. So you just stay high forever, just thinking of meditating on the Lord all the time. And I just can't imagine what that must be like. In the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says, "So, to meditate on the Supreme Lord is to meditate on the activities, forms, pastime, name, and fame of the Lord. That is easier than what is imagined as meditation on the impersonal feature of the Supreme." So, I think about impersonalists and how, they try very hard to meditate on a void, or just, nothing is another word for a void, or a light, or something like that. And I could never do that. I mean, maybe some people have success, but I'm not one of those people. Because even if I told all of you, okay, think of nothing right now. Okay, everybody, are you thinking of nothing? Is everyone thinking of nothing? Are you? No? Oh, okay.
Will we be tested?
Yes, there's a test after this. I'm not sure how that'll manifest, but...
But I won't think about it.
Yes, but don't think about it. Exactly, think of nothing. And even if you're like, okay, I'm thinking of nothing, well, then you're not thinking of nothing, you're thinking of the word nothing. You're thinking so, okay, I'm trying to think of a void. Okay, it's just pretty difficult. I've not been able to accomplish it. It just kind of baffles my mind that even when I am trying to meditate on the form of the Lord or to concentrate on the sound of the holy names, I still have a hard time controlling my mind. It's like wandering around thinking, okay, what's for breakfast? Oh my gosh, did you hear what so-and-so did last night? These are the things that keep popping up in my mind. Or you have to do this, and this today. You better get on that, and, you're not going to have time. And this is with an object of meditation. So, if I don't have anything to focus on, I can only imagine it'd be that much worse. So I looked at the definition of meditation from Webster's. So the definition of meditation is 1, to think deeply or focus one's mind for a period of time in silence or with the aid of chanting for religious or spiritual purposes. So I think this is kind of interesting because the Mayavadi concept of meditation doesn't really go with that. So to think deeply about what? What are we thinking deeply about? If you're going to think deeply about nothing, it doesn't make sense. Or focus one's mind. Focus on what? So then there's also another secondary definition, which is to think deeply or carefully about something. Something. So that's not nothing.
Usually it's their breath.
Yeah.
Usually they're focused on their breath.
Okay, well,
Still not,
it's not a whole lot to hold on to there. So in this verse, and in many verses before this, we're learning we have to focus on the form of the Lord. And that's something that's really hard to do sometimes, and other times it's very easy to do. So, but for when it's more difficult, that's why we have these beautiful deities here, so that we can look at them. Or sometimes when I'm trying to meditate on the form of the Lord and I'm having a hard time, if anyone's seen my room, there's just pictures and deities of Krishna and his various forms all over my room. So I just have to be in there and look in any direction, and there's a form of Krishna I can focus on. And so that I find helpful. So also this being constantly in that meditation on the Lord is called samadhi. So I wanted to read from this book called Samadhis, which is a good book. Just a little bit about what samadhi means. The word samadhi means complete concentration of the mind on the Supreme Lord. The Nirukti Vedic dictionary says, Samyag atiyatesmin atma tattva yatatmayam. One is in samadhi when the mind is completely fixed in understanding the truth of the self. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras list samadhi as the last of 8 progressive stages of yoga. 1 yama, 2 niyama, 3 asana, 4 pranayama, 5 pratyahara, 6 dharana, 7 dhyana, 8 samadhi. Lord Sri Krishna tells Uddhava that he himself is the object of samadhi in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11:16-24. Yoganam Atma Samrodho. Among the progressive states of yoga, I am the final stage, samadhi, where the soul is completely free from illusion. Completely free from illusion means that one has realized the Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan features of the Absolute Truth. At this highest perfectional stage of self-realization, or samadhi, one understands that he is the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and his only duty is to work in Krishna consciousness. In the samadhi of Krishna consciousness, a person experiences ecstasy by concentrating all the activities of his mind and senses upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. Whether awake or asleep, the devotee constantly thinks of Sri Krishna's name, form, qualities, abode, and pastimes. Thus, samadhi is a state of consciousness wherein the devotee always fixes his mind on Krishna by meditation and devotional service. He doesn't forget the Lord even for a moment. The gopis of Vrindavan showed the perfection of samadhi by their constant absorption in thoughts of Krishna and his pastimes. Besides being an active state of mental and physical absorption in Krishna's service, samadhi is a state of consciousness one can achieve at the time of death. Lord Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 8:5, Anta kale cha mam eva. Anyone who remembers me at the time of death will immediately attain my nature without a doubt. A devotee who is fixed in Krishna and his service while living will be fixed in remembering Krishna while dying. Thus, a lifetime of samadhi and Krishna consciousness ends in success. At the critical moment of death, when all the bodily functions become drastically disturbed, a sincere devotee will remember Sri Krishna in his innermost consciousness. This will save him from falling down into material existence. When death arrives, an accomplished Vaishnava enters a trance of meditation, samadhi, on the Supreme Lord. Detaching himself from the material body, he attains the supreme consciousness. Therefore, a perfected devotee doesn't die in the ordinary sense, but he goes into samadhi. Whereas the common man dies miserably due to excessive attachment to his material body, the Yamadutas, agents of death, drag him to hell for judgment, punishment, and rebirth, to suffer again in another material body. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So in that excerpt that I read from that book, they talked about how the gopis are in samadhi, how they're always focused on Krishna. This reminded me of the story where the gopis were spending some time with Krishna and they started to get a little bit proud, and Krishna disappeared. And the gopis were looking everywhere for him, and they're getting a little distraught and kind of getting a little bit crazy even. And so they start talking to they realized, they knew that Krishna's in everything and is part of everything, and that everything comes from Krishna. So they start talking to all the trees and to the plants and asking, have you seen Krishna? So, the gopis are like, oh, please, banyan tree, have you seen the son of Nanda? Has he passed by this way? Or dear Tulsi Devi, have you seen Krishna? Has that young man been by this way? I mean, they asked the Tulsi, they asked the malati flowers, they asked the fruit trees, the mango trees, the jackfruit trees, the pear trees, the blackberry trees. And they just became delirious, so delirious that in their complete focus on Krishna, that they started reenacting his pastimes. And so one gopi would pretend to be Krishna, and another gopi would pretend to be Putana, and they would fight, and the gopi pretending to be Krishna would suck the life out of the gopi pretending to be Putana, and they would reenact that story. Or another gopi would also pretend to be Krishna, and another one would pretend to be Trinavarta, and the great whirlwind that would pick Krishna up and try to take him away. But Krishna became too heavy, and Trinavarta was not able to take him. And this also reminds me of one of my favorite times, which was, at least in the Krishna book, it says it's a different time, where Radha is separated from Krishna, and she's kind of a little bit crazy, and she ends up talking to a bumblebee about Krishna, and I wanted to read that. I thought that's really cute. I like what she says. Huh?
Isn't the bumblebee Uruva?
I don't believe so. I think I don't know if it was right before that. I think, or it might have been right before the other gopis were asking the trees and stuff, that Uddhava brought a letter from Krishna. Yeah. So here's what Radha said to the bumblebee. Bumblebee, you are accustomed to drinking honey from the flowers, and therefore you have preferred to be a messenger of Krishna, who is of the same nature as you. I have seen your mustaches the red power of kumkum, which was smeared on the flower garland of Krishna while he was pressing the breast of some other girl who is my competitor. You are feeling very proud by touching that flower, and your mustaches have become reddish. You have come here carrying a message for me. You are anxious to touch my feet, but my dear bumblebee, let me warn you, don't touch me. I don't want any messages from your unreliable master. If you are the unreliable servant of an unreliable master. I just love that she's talking about his mustaches. I never thought about a bumblebee having mustaches, but it just conjures such an image in my mind.
It's just like got milk.
Yeah. Got kumkum. So she further addresses the bumblebee. Your master Krishna is exactly of your quality. You sit down on a flower, and after taking a little honey, you immediately fly away and sit in another flower and taste. You are just like your master Krishna. He gave us the chance of tasting the touch of his lips and then left altogether. I know also that the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, who is always in the midst of the lotus flower, is constantly engaged in Krishna's service. But I do not know why she has become so captivated by Krishna. She is attached to him, although she knows his actual character. As far as we are concerned, we are more intelligent than the goddess of fortune. We are not going to be cheated any more by Krishna or his messengers. Oh. And I just think that's just so wonderful, because she's, pining away for Krishna so badly, but at the same time saying, like, I'm not going to stand for this anymore, And I think, some of us can identify with those feelings for sure, when you love somebody, that you might be so mad and saying, oh, I'm never going to talk to that person ever again. But then you see them, and of course, that all melts away. So she continues, you foolish bumblebee, you are trying to satisfy me and get a reward by singing the glories of Krishna, but it is a useless attempt. We are all bereft of our possessions. We are away from our homes and families. We know very well about Krishna. We know even more than you. So whatever you make up about him will be old stories to us. Krishna is now in the city and is better known as a friend of Arjuna. He now has many new girlfriends, and they are no doubt very happy in association with him, because the lusty burning sensation of their breasts has been satisfied by Krishna. They are now happy. If you go there and glorify Krishna, they may be pleased to reward you. You are just trying to pacify me by your behavior as a flatterer, and therefore you have put your head under my feet. But I know the trick which you are trying to play. I know you are a messenger coming from a great trickster, Krishna. Therefore, please leave me. So she goes on quite long, but I just think that's such a sweet and wonderful part of the Krishna book. I mean, just to hear her lamentation about being away from Krishna and her desire to to be angry at him, but you can tell that she's not going to be able to maintain that anger in any shape or form as soon as she sees him, and she's going to keep looking for him. And also, it's a known fact, if you are angry at someone, I mean, you can only truly be really angry because you have some feeling there. If you had no feeling for that person, you just wouldn't care. They would be gone, and you wouldn't care. So I also wanted to, let's see. Oh, this is an interesting quote that this is from the Garuda Purana, but it was as quoted in the Nectar of Devotion, and it's about mystic yogis under the direct shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it talks about how even when a great devotee is asleep, they're still in trance thinking about Krishna. And so I wonder, how is that possible? If I'm sleeping, I can't control what I'm thinking about, but it's possible. So this quote is, in all three stages of their consciousness, namely wakefulness, dreaming, and deep sleep, the devotees are absorbed in the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, in their complete absorption in thought of Krishna, they do not sleep. So even in deep sleep, they do not sleep. So that's amazing. I do remember going on a trip with some of the devotees, and I had to sleep with one of the other ladies, and she said I was chanting in my sleep. So that was shocking to me, but hopefully I'm getting some sleep in there too. I don't know. So I also wanted to read a few nice passages from the gopis in separation, the gopis' feelings of separation. These are just some of the things that they were saying when they were separated from Lord Krishna. The gopis used to discuss Krishna amongst themselves, and their talk were as follows. My dear friends, one gopi said, do you know that when Krishna lies on the ground, he rests his left elbow and his head on his left hand? He moves his attractive eyebrows while playing his flute with his delicate fingers, and the sound he produces creates such a nice atmosphere that the denizens of the heavenly planets who travel in space with their wives and beloveds stop their airplanes, for they are stunned by the vibrations of the flute. The wives of the demigods are seated in the planes, then become very much ashamed of their singing and musical qualifications. Not only that, they become afflicted with conjugal love, and their hair and tight clothes immediately loosen. Another gopi said, my dear friends, Krishna is so beautiful that the goddess of fortune always remains on his chest, and he is always adorned with a golden necklace. Beautiful Krishna plays his flute in order to enliven the hearts of many devotees. He is the only friend of the suffering living entities. When he plays his flute, all the cows and other animals of Vrindavan, although engaged in eating, simply take a morsel of food in their mouths and stop chewing. Their ears rise up and they become stunned. They do not appear alive, but like painted animals. Krishna's flute playing is so attractive that even the animals become enchanted. What to speak of ourselves? I think about that a lot too, is, like how enchanting must the sound of Krishna's flute be. I mean, that's another thing I can't wrap my mind around. Even, like my most favorite song or the greatest piece of music ever written, which is certainly going to be different for everybody, still couldn't possibly compare to the sound of Krishna's flute. So I just can't imagine what that must sound like. But, even my most, I'm thinking of there's some really great classical songs that every time I hear just really move me. And even that cannot compare to the sound of Krishna's flute. So, wow. Another gopi said, my dear friends, not only living animals, but inanimate objects like the rivers and lakes of Vrindavan also become stunned when Krishna passes with the peacock feathers on his head and his body smeared with the minerals of Vrindavan. With leaves and flowers decorating his body, he looks like some hero. When he plays on his flute and calls the cows with Balaram, the river Yamuna stops flowing and waits for the air to carry dust from his lotus feet. But the river Yamuna is unfortunate like us and does not get Krishna's mercy. The river simply remained stunned, stopping its waves just as we also stopped crying for Krishna in expectation. In the absence of Krishna, the gopis were constantly shedding tears, but sometimes when they expected that Krishna was coming, they would stop crying. But when they saw that Krishna was not coming, they would again become frustrated and begin to cry. One gopi said, "My dear friends, Krishna and Balaram are nicely dressed with earrings and pearl necklaces. They enjoy themselves on the top of Govardhan Hill, and everything becomes absorbed in transcendental pleasure when Krishna plays on his flute, charming the whole created manifestation. When he plays, the clouds stop their loud thundering out of fear of disturbing the vibration of his flute. Instead, they respond with mild thunder, and so congratulate Krishna, their friend." I just think that's very cute. So the thundering clouds quiet down a little bit and just respond with mild thunder. Oh, that's beautiful. So, another gopi said, "My dear friends, when Krishna returns home with his cows, the footprints of the soles of his feet with flag, thunderbolt, trident, and lotus flower relieve the pain the earth feels when the cows traverse it. He walks in a stride which is so attractive, and he carries his flute. Just by looking at him, we become lusty to enjoy his company. At that time, our movements cease. We become just like trees and stand perfectly still, unaware that our hair and clothes are loosening." Krishna had many thousands of cows, and they were divided into groups according to their colors. They were also differently named according to color. When he would prepare to return from the pasturing grounds, he would gather all the cows. As Vaishnavas count 108 beads, which represent the 108 individual gopis, so Krishna would also count on 108 beads to count the different groups of cows. So I remember hearing a pastime, I think it must have been Indriyuma Swami Maharaj, that was talking about how Krishna had this big strand of counter beads for each cow, and that each bead was a separate jewel or pearl. And I think about that a lot. I don't know why. I think like, wow, one, how long must that strand be? And then also I remember in that same lecture, he said that Krishna can remember each cow's name individually, and he would call them individually and then count them off on the beads to make sure they, got home safely. Yeah, it's so sweet, and I just I don't know, it's amazing to me to just hold that image in my mind. So let me just read this last paragraph here of this chapter. I think it's very, very beautiful. And I'll just read it. Such descriptions of Krishna's transcendental pastimes and activities were remembered by the gopis during his absence from Vrindavan. They give us some idea of how attractive Krishna is, not only to human beings, but to all animate and inanimate objects. In Vrindavan, everyone and everything is attracted to Krishna, including the trees, the plants, the water, and animals like the deer and the cows. That is the perfect description of Krishna's all-attractiveness. The example of the gopis is very instructive to persons who are trying to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness. One can very easily associate with Krishna simply by remembering his transcendental pastimes. Everyone has a tendency to love someone. That Krishna should be the object of love is the central point of Krishna consciousness. By constantly chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and remembering the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, one can be fully in Krishna consciousness and thus make his life sublime and fruitful. And so that is just a really one of the highest examples of samadhi, is just how the gopis are just so always focused on Krishna all the time. But there's also other examples too, like look at Srila Prabhupada's life, and just how everything, at the age when so many men in our culture are, they're retiring, and then maybe they'll go play some golf, or, go out for breakfast on Sundays and putter around the house, maybe do some gardening, But Srila Prabhupada was traveling the world, constantly, and starting this movement and distributing this knowledge to all of us so that we can all have a chance to get out of this cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. and he was so focused on Krishna, on bringing Krishna to all of us, that it's really just an amazing example that I certainly am not capable of doing. I mean, he was 70 years old and doing this. I'm like 41, and I couldn't imagine, staying up into the wee hours of the night translating text, writing books, then getting up in the morning and of course doing all your sadhana and traveling all over the world and opening temples and making new devotees. And I just don't know how one can do that. But obviously, if someone's in samadhi, they're in trance, and that's just their whole focus. And so I just find that super inspiring. And I will say that I'm in no way saying I'm in samadhi. I'm not, but I'll say I had a small glimpse of it yesterday because I had to work in the restaurant, but I was preparing for this class. And I was so engrossed reading about the gopis and Krishna that I totally ended up being late and I was like, oh my gosh, and I ran over here and I had to have Jiro Prabhu get the cash drawer for me because there was already customers. So so I was briefly for a moment fully absorbed in Krishna and hopefully I can expand that time as time progresses, as I get purification. So does anybody have any thoughts or questions? Yes, Vanessa.
So I like your descriptions and everything you told from the Garuda Purana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the form of the Lord. I read. I think it was in the second canto in the early chapters. It talks about meditating on the Virat Rupa for beginners, and then you have the Musha. I tend to think about when they described the body, the body parts of Krishna.
Yeah.
And so when I look out and I'm experiencing what I'm experiencing internally, but I can look out and kind of meditate there are the mountains, those are the stacks, or those bones, look at his body, and then the trees, and those are the hairs on his body, and so I find that gives me a lot of comfort if I don't have a picture of Krishna in front of me, or if I can't revert back to that vision internally, I can just look out and think about it.
Yeah, I when I first started chanting, I had a really hard time sort of focusing on the form of Krishna. I had one picture that I looked at a lot, but I liked to go chant outside, and I didn't carry the one picture around with me. And I would think about that too. And the other thing I would think about a lot is the part in the Bhagavad Gita where he says, "I am the taste of water, and I'm the light of the moon, the sun and the moon." And because I used to like to look at the moon and think, okay, that's Krishna, the light of the moon. And then I'd drink my water and it's like this, okay, that's Krishna, the taste of water. And sometimes I still think about that a lot, but not as much as I did in the past. And now I think I'll try to do that again. Is there anyone else? Anybody else have any questions? Or anything they want to share? Okay. Bhagavatam Ki Jai.